evening, and good now to everyone who may be out there watching in whatever time zone you happen to inhabit. Today on BetaCodex Live, we will be discussing Principle 4 and the topic of mono-maximization. What's the problem with that? What does that mean? And because who knows, you may not be familiar with that if you're new to the BetaCodex. And with me today, I'm Ryan Erickson, who I do work for Red 42 and community organizing for the BetaCodex network. And with me today, and for the past 7 weeks here in this place, is Niels Pflaeging. Hello, Niels.
Hello, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between and beyond.
Ladies and gentlemen, everyone. Oh, I love this. I love this. Beyond the binary. Beyond the binary. So, the topic today, BetaCodex Principle 4. All around success. Comprehensive fitness, not mono-maximization. The topic of today. What does that mean? An organization should always grow in such a way that it can survive in the long term. Size is unimportant. Growth is not a goal, but usually just a type of problem to factor into what you value. Do not put your organization in a situation in which it only survives if it grows. Never confuse sales, profits, size, or market share with success. Okay, then that's a quote from the BetaCodex brochure that we're working on and to help folks understand what it means to be successful. And so
that little paragraph should make many people think about the health of their business.
Exactly. And so all around success, not mono-maximization. What is mono-maximization?
Should I try to explain a little bit?
You said in a conversation we had previously, you said you invented that term.
Yes. It's a self-defense term. We had to invent it because it didn't. The right thing didn't exist. At least to my knowledge, the right term didn't exist. But let's do a little bit history searching. When the BetaCodex was derived from the Beyond Budgeting model, so to speak, from the 12 principles of Beyond Budgeting, and that rework happened in 2007, 2008 for the first time that we reworked the codex again. And in the original Beyond Budgeting set of principles, this kind of principle didn't exist. So this came to me in my work on my first and second books in 2003 and 2006, when I researched the literature on these BetaCodex cases like Toyota, WL Gore, Handelsbanken, DM Drogeriemarkt, and so on, Southwest Airlines. And they all had an articulation of this principle. And I thought, okay, this is missing from the Beyond Budgeting, from the 12 principles we have. And if this is so common, they all accentuated that one shall never maximize profit. Semco, for example, is a great case. Ricardo Semler articulated this very early on, 20 years ago, very well. So you should never maximize profits. You should never grow too much. That's a very typical Toyota thing. Never grow too much. If you want to level up, make sure that you never have to close a factory then afterwards if a slump occurs and so on. And on the other side, this philosophy that you should never maximize one thing that might create harm on another level of organizational profile, and all these, yeah.
Well, I was going to say this is systems theory, isn't it? Systems
Yes,
thinking in terms
exactly.
of don't do local optimization because you're going to have some kind of negative externality in the system beyond. So,
yeah. Or it's like a diet thing. If you want to make a diet and you think about doing a chocolate diet, only eating chocolate, that might work for a while, but not forever, probably, right? At some point you will die probably from a problem. So this mono-maximization, the idea of, and of course, 20 or so years ago, when, for example, Scrum was born, and Beyond Budgeting was born 25 years ago already. At the time, there was one particular fashion or fad of mono-maximization that was very important and very highly lauded and commented everywhere, which was shareholder value maximization, right? The optimization of shareholder value.
Yeah.
The shareholder value hype. Yeah. Optimize that, or there was another previous hype that was about cash flow optimization. Optimize cash flow, that's everything. Jack Welch, I think, was a propagandist of that. And that today, I think we have more of a growth hype thing in tech, especially, for example, market share tech. Netflix is a particular case. When you read this paragraph, I had to think of Netflix. And Netflix, a company that is doomed to grow. Otherwise, the company will fall apart because they have such an overburdened balance sheet. If they do not sustain growth in subscription and money, they cannot even finance their, let's say, their debt and their investment, because they do accounting practice where they invest production cost of movies and TV shows and so on. So it's many tech companies today have never made a profit, have never made a significant profit. They only go for growth, clicks, awareness, market share, and they are, of course, bound to fail at some point. And this has become so normal to us, this kind of rip-off of shareholders, and shareholder stupidity, of course, wants to be ripped off. So mono-maximization is alive and kicking, but it has changed a little bit. 10, 20 years ago, I would have never imagined that growth would be such a hype.
Well,
today it seems to be, especially in the US, it seems to be normal.
Well, I was going to say,
by the way,
yes,
startup has become a synonym of mono-maximization in a way, right? Being a startup has become synonymous almost of maximizing one single thing, and usually it's growth.
Growth,
terrible.
Active users, whatever the idea of the North Star metric.
Attention.
Yeah. So how many clicks, and again, that's all kind of, I don't know whether that's a lagging indicator. I want to talk about that, but two things came to mind. One was, okay, well, we talk about Netflix. What about Amazon? Haven't they been just growing and growing and growing and growing? And I don't know specifically what's behind Amazon and the principles and purpose of Mr. Bezos and folk, but aren't they an example of mono-maximization and growth for good, maybe?
For good?
Yeah. Well,
okay,
aren't they successful? So all around success, comprehensive fitness, not mono-maximization. So isn't Amazon comprehensively fit because they are so successful?
That's a great question, and I'm not trying here to badmouth any company or overly criticize individual companies. So let's just take this as a typical example. I think Amazon is a great example of mono-maximization, a terrible example of mono-maximization. I do not have the exact numbers right now. We didn't script this, so I do not remember the exact numbers. But I think Amazon didn't make a profit for about 20 years.
Right.
They went for growth for a very, very long time. Yeah. Without making a profit. Now they're making a profit. So in a way, during 20 years or so, they bought market share on the back of their shareholders and on the back of overhyping their stock value, which of course is legitimate. It's not against the law. But on the other hand, if you look at, not sure how the perception of Amazon is in America right now, here in Europe.
We'll go into that.
It's not a good one, not paying well, not paying fairly, not allowing the Starbucks story of not allowing employee representatives in, how is it called?
Union representation, collective
fighting unions. That is one of the burdens of companies that do. Ultimately, mono-maximization is about organizations losing their soul, or willingly giving up their soul, going to the dark side for the sake of maximization of a single thing or a brute dumb indicator. There are great stories of mono-maximization as well. For example, there's a story back in history, a company that, I'm not sure in which business they were, something like processing, industrial processing or so. And they kind of try to mono-maximize safety. Because at a certain point, they had so many accidents in their factories, and so they went to consciously over-accentuating safety. Of course, that doesn't really mean to do safety and not trying to make a profit. Organizations need to make a profit, and profit is not a bad thing, right? It's just once you put profit or shareholder value first, you give up on being, an employee-friendly organization, a client-friendly organization, an innovative organization, whatever, a willingly tax-paying organization. And we have seen on Amazon as an amazingly terrible case in that regard as well, as are Apple and most other tech firms, even Google. All this tax avoidance thing is also a sign of mono-maximization, and the opposite being, of course, the positive opposite of mono-maximization being all-around success, or comprehensive fitness, as we have come to call it, which means, okay, there is something like an alternative to mono-maximization. We will get into this in a moment.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, thank you for indulging me in the Amazon exploration. And thinking about Amazon, and you asked about the perception of Amazon here in the U.S. Everyone loves the convenience of Amazon. I'm sure that's a global desire. And by investing singularly in market share, they have market dominance. At what cost, though? And I think the human cost of the horrible treatment of the drivers, the factory workers, and again, as you said, the really abhorrent tactics they use to prevent collective bargaining and
Yes.
labor representation. I mean, that's horrible.
Yeah. And of course, it's totally undemocratic what these company politics do, and that then reflects in our society as well. Imagine working for Amazon. How would that, as an Amazon employee, how will that over time erode your perception of democracy? If you work for, I'm embedded in a system, part of a system that treats people. I mean, on Amazon Prime, there's a brilliant TV show that bashes this kind of fascist culture, The Boys.
I love The Boys.
In a way satirizes this whole Amazon thing. In a way, this corporate cronyism, this corporate corruption, and fascist accentuation of profits and dominance and infiltration of the state and so on. So it's interesting that this show, brilliant show, by the way, runs on Amazon Prime. But of course, this is not this principle we are discussing is not about Amazon. It's not about a particular company. And I think what's so troublesome to me is that the culture of mono-maximization that we have witnessed over the last 30, 40 years, maybe since Wall Street, the movie Wall Street,
Michael Douglas,
where this became rampant, this shareholder maximization at all cost and putting people on the streets. And so, of course, this mono-maximization has changed, has shown various facets over time. Today, of course, there's greenwashing, which pretends to do good things and not just mono-maximizing while mono-maximizing. Yeah. So, but I think the most worrying thing is not that, therefore, organizations will collapse more frequently, have shorter time spent, shorter life cycles. But I believe that mono-maximization also damages democracy, and this is what we see in our world. So the BetaCodex take a stance on this, saying no organization in the world shall mono-maximize, not as a startup, not as an aged organization. We shall seek comprehensive fitness, a positive circle of influence between stakeholders.
Yeah, some might call that a holistic view.
Yes, which is a little too smooth, too bland for my taste. That's my psychology. But I agree. Yes, it is a holistic idea. Totally, I totally agree.
And I think the other
I
thing
like to
in
put it more. Yeah,
you want to be more specific about it again, and that's I understand it.
exactly. To say, okay, there are these major stakeholders, starting with, let's say, starting with employees who then create value for clients, who collectively then create value for, let's say, the public and the society. Employees creating value for clients, and these two groups together create societal value, and these three together create value for shareholders or owners. And those four closing, being in a close, harmonious relationship, in a way, holistic relationship, that, again, if you have all these things, then you can attract the best people or best teams, not the best people really, but best teams for your organization. So you can close this virtuous cycle of not mono-maximization, but all-around success.
all around success.
For that, we have to drop fixed targets, incentive systems, certain indicators that are foolish and evil, like growth indicators and so on. Yeah.
Well, and the also, again, the holistic perspective, you talk about the customer, the teams in the periphery, of course, then the supportive structure in the center of an organization, the shareholders, other stakeholders, and then you have this may be a topic for another day about the SDGs, like the Sustainable Development Goals, and those kind of planet nurturing, or people, process, product, and planet in purpose. All those things together, and that if to maximize for only for the planet, then you have all sorts of other negative externalities that you run into. But again, the idea of I think it is even beyond the societal system. It's society, and then the planet, and then the ecosystem around it. So this is fitness. How do you define fitness? And there's a couple different ways you can do that. And I think one thing is, I think there's a Darwinian aspect of it, and then that people misunderstand Darwin's idea of what fitness was in terms of
Yes.
survival of the fittest, meaning survival of the most competitive, most aggressive. But fitness actually means, and meant in the Darwinian view, in Origin of Species, was able to adapt and to survive within the environment around it. And again,
Yes.
bringing it back to the principle is that organizations need to be adaptable, and so that they can survive and be fit for purpose in their future.
Very well put, Ryan. Yes, when we picked the term fitness as in comprehensive fitness in the set of BetaCodex principles, we wanted to use this association with fitness as being fitting, into context, into circumstance, appropriate size, appropriate profit, which can be high, appropriate salaries, appropriate level of dealing with the environment. Appropriateness would be the even better term maybe, but fitness is cooler. I think fitness is edgy in the sense that it fit what what does it mean? So that's why we chose the term. So it's about, and this is again this principle or this philosophy we are discussing. It was not our idea, my idea, or so on. We really found it in the literature about Toyota, Semco, AES, great case, by the way, in the United States. Not so much anymore, maybe, of beta, but it was in the 2000s.
The energy utility, AES?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure how the case is today, but at the time of Dennis Becker, the former CEO, it was a fantastic case. And so many of these beta CEOs or founders or owners, they wrote the same philosophy. And at a certain point, upon reading all these sources, these interviews, these books, and so on, Herb Kelleher of Southwest Airlines articulated this brilliantly as well. I thought, okay, this seems to be a pattern, this abandonment of individual fixed targets, mono view of one single target that one should grow, and really the idea of what's an appropriate target for this. And I give you an example that at the time when I discovered it, shocked me a little bit. DM Drogeriemarkt is a famous retail company here in Germany and in Europe overall. 60 to 70,000 employees, so sizable. And the CEO owner of DM Drogeriemarkt, well, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he said the following. He said, for us as a retail company, and they are a drugstore chain, supermarket drugstore chain kind of thing, he said, any profit of more than 2.5% over sales is immoral. And that bugged me a little bit. As an economist, I thought that is stupid. That is stupid too. But the logic is the following. An appropriate profit for a retail company in this kind of line of business, which is consumer goods, should not be bigger than 2.5. 2.5 is good, he said. We should have it, but not more. If we have more, we should either do what? Another interesting question. Can you guess, Ryan? We never discussed.
Well, I would say invest. Invest. What kind of?
You could invest. Okay, you could invest. Invest more.
Give to the community, charity, social.
More fundamental. More fundamental.
Give it to the employees.
Yes. Raise salaries, he said.
Yeah.
Götz Werner, he said, we can then either raise salaries or lower prices. Both is fair and well. But we should not have more than 2.5. So this kind of ethical stance at profits, and to say, we're not existing as an organization. I mean, I wrote about this in the What Would Drucker Do book as well. Peter Drucker talked beautifully about this. He is kind of one of the philosophers of anti-mono-maximization. But this idea that a company should not have excessive profits. It should not have excessive spans of salaries between CEO and worker. So there is something like a right thing, an ethical stance on everything, on pay, on pricing, on profits, on growth. You should not sustain too much growth. You should not seek too much growth. Growth is a problem for beta organizations, and they recognize that growth is the price of success, not a feature of success.
Well, and I think we talked about this too in our lead up to this session, that if we think of a human system, that none of us as human organisms are a mono-maximized system. And
Yes.
what is the most I would say the most growth-oriented mono-maximized condition that you experience in the human body? It's cancer.
We know what it is, right? It's not a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing. And the cancer grows at all costs and to the death of the individual. So and
trees,
again, having a little bit of experience
do not grow
with that,
into the sky, right?
Don't grow into the sky.
But the profound thing. Sorry, while you were just talking, I also thought of this other thing. Sure. Any organization that mono-maximizes growth or profit or that kind of shit is ultimately sucks life out of societies and even out of democracy. It's a serious thing. It's an ethical thing. We're talking about an ethical thing as well. The ethics of doing business. In Germany, we have this a beautiful, very old, ancient expression, anständiger Kaufmann. The ethical Kaufmann is, what's a Kaufmann? I mean, that's a famous Jewish name, of course. And by now, the Kaufmann is the company owner, right?
Okay.
An ethical entrepreneur, yeah. Of course, doesn't maximize any single thing. You need to have a profit to make a living. You need to satisfy your clients or over-satisfy your clients, surprise your clients. You need to feed your employees and allow them for a decent stay. And you need to pay taxes and be proud of it, ultimately. I think that's a different thing.
Organizational, it's citizenship. It is being
exactly
a good organizational
ultimately, we're talking about
citizen.
citizenry. Yes.
And this also kind of it gets us into the democracy, the low resolution discussion of democracy versus communism versus socialism versus all this stuff that's this bullshit noise conversation. That when you said, oh my gosh, 2% 2.5, that you would limit the profit of a corporation to 2.5% and then give it back to the employees. Well, that's just communism. That's just taking from it. No. It is. I think it's a sense of, and if we think about the whole system, and if we are having a holistic view of what is in the best interest of human flourishing, even for the individual. This is not about, oh, we're going to sacrifice individual success for group identity or that. This is about what is best for the individuals. Well, it is sharing. It is with us, for us, in a democratic environment where the people in teams at the periphery of an organization serving a market need for the benefit of society and the organization and all of those things. That is the human side of enterprise. And in that, there becomes, oh, well, wow. Then the organizations we're working in, aren't they kind of authoritarian in their way? Are they kind of fascist if you have this one leader choosing what everyone else will do and saying, this is our target, this is our purpose, thou shalt follow our purpose. It is our purpose. It's really my purpose to go. No, you don't know. No, you don't know in the field. No, we know. And that is not democracy.
No. I think a more democratic thing is, and just to think of a few beta organizations, Southwest Airlines ideas, original founding idea of making air travel accessible to all. That was a truly beautiful and revolutionary idea, and I think it continues to be a beautiful idea. The environmental impact side, taking that apart a little bit, and I think it's an unsolved problem, of course, that the airline industry as a whole and that we as societies have. So I think that's the kind of higher purpose that organizations, of course, should be looking for. And do you need to make a profit continuously? And Southwest Airlines has.
Well, Southwest is an interesting case recently because of all the crap they've had going on with their information systems and all that. But I think that's not a purpose problem. That's not an organizational design problem. That's something else. And I think you also, again, bringing in the environmental concern of the whole industry, right? So they've chosen their sphere of activity. They're going to be an airline, but people need to travel. What can we do to make that travel experience better for everybody, for the passengers, for the employees, and for the cost, all of that stuff? That is,
by the way, I once read, I'm not an industry specialist, of course, but I once read an article or a study about comparing Southwest Airlines fuel consumption with other airlines and finding that Southwest Airlines had significantly lower fuel consumption because the pilots behave differently at Southwest Airlines. This is something I don't have the sources here right now. We could refer to that at another occasion. But what the article or the study that I looked at there claimed is that because there was a different set of targets, way of using targets and measures of success, a different way of dealing with performance, really. That's why pilots took huge care to save fuel, and that actually, of course, that would reduce costs, have a positive impact on profit, positive environmental. So that's the kind of thinking that we want in organizations. How can we be in the same industry and be better? You just have to be the best in your industry. That's the claim. That's what I want to see, and that's what we want to see in the world and societies. And I do not see this so much at Amazon, for example, who could be the best employer in their industry as well. And sadly, they aren't. Aldi is, as far as I hear, paying best salaries, being very fair, treating their employees. That's the ambition, to be best in all these towards all these shareholders, to be the best for employees, to be the best for clients, to be the best for society, which involves a lot of shit, environmental taxes and so on. Law-abiding, citizenry, democratic, and the best for the shareholders, but the shareholders come last.
And I was excited. I was trying to jump in there with, you mentioned the pilot example, and the pilots, because they are connected with the purpose of the organization to be the low cost leader, blah, 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 whatever how they state the purpose of the company. And because they're connected with that purpose and also have this autonomy I've never flown Southwest, but you hear all the stories about how the teams, the small groups that fly those airlines they have the sense of autonomy, and they can make decisions that impact that flight. And the pilot being connected with purpose creates,
and with the plane, the crew is connected with the plane. They kind of own their plane. Not many people understand this. It's very different from conventional airguns. They have their, like the crews have like their own aircraft. So it's a very it's crazy shit, really, how they work, how different they are, in spite of doing the same thing as Delta and United Airlines and Lufthansa, of course. And very different way of operating and of trying to make the organization entrepreneurial, decentralized, not running on fixed targets, but people being aware, connected with purpose, as you call it. And of course, the beauty of this connectedness with purpose is you do not have to connect people with purpose. That's the mistake of logic.
Why would
you have to connect people with purpose, which is a fascist idea. People are connected with purpose if you let them. If you don't force them to be disconnected with purpose, if you do not force or bribe or mistreat them.
Well, I think you're talking about forcing a purpose on someone who didn't choose
which happens all the time.
Yeah,
like vision statements, workshops where managers have to write in blood that they support this new culture statement and this new value statement and so on, and the targets that are rolled out and kicked off, and meetings with the CEO towards the
OKRs. Oops, sorry.
Yeah. The what?
Sorry. OKRs.
Yes. Okay. So many bad things and ideologies driven into organizations. We have to perfect this into an art. Yeah. So there are so many demons residing in organizations. We really have to drive out the demons of mono-maximization. I think we now identified a few, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's an invitation. And thinking of Southwest, again, even in our conversation, we've talked about several of the principles of a beta organization, not just the comprehensive fitness and all-around success, but we talked about team autonomy, we talked about the relative targets, and also what you brought up in the ownership of the plane. That brings up a couple other principles to me, is this resource expediency, and that the sense of being transparent with, and that having, I'm just trying to think of the specific word about showing trust in a team of employees in their mastery of what they're doing in the plane itself, so that we trust you with ownership and management of this very complicated thing, because you are people with ideas and we value your ideas.
And nobody can manage you. You can manage the business. We shall not manage you. We cannot manage you. You must manage the business by taking care of the station in the airline business, and the station, being the bigger chunk of a business, and the crews taking care of the planes themselves. So that's the beauty of decentralization again. And of course, this is a way of showing that we're just talking about principle number 4 of the BetaCodex, right?
Yes.
And again, you just started connecting this principle to the other principles, number 7 or 8, relative targets, and we just talked about decentralization, principle number 2, I think. Quite sure.
And principle 1, team autonomy.
And team autonomy. Of course, these are all intimately connected. You cannot do one thing without another. That's why Amazon is so stuck, I think, in command and control, because it needs to break free from the principles of what we call alpha, mono-maximization, centralized command and control, centralized planning, individual fixed targets and incentives attached to it and so on, you know, resource control by allocations. By the way, I had another example I wanted to mention, that is anti-mono-maximization. Do we still have a minute?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We at
From
this
the
point
culture,
we're past 30 minutes, so that's
fuck
an
it.
artificial
So
boundary.
fuck it.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to briefly mention this person that I admire a lot, 73 years old, an artist I admire a lot. I know you admire him a lot as well. And I recently thought, oh my God, this man is doing everything right. I saw a video with him on TikTok the other day where he explained, do you know who I'm talking about?
I'm not off the top of my
He's
head.
an old guy, musician. You will go on to a concert even. Pay $200, $300.
Oh yeah. Oh my. Yes.
And a decent amount of money. All his concerts
an obscene amount of money to go see this particular.
It's ridiculous, and it's really ridiculous. I cannot afford this amount of money. But here's the thing. Of course, I recently I thought this man is doing everything right. There's a little video in which we're talking of Peter Gabriel, of course, one of the co-founders of Genesis, and had this long distinguished solo career. Peter Gabriel, one of the greatest pop artists of all times, of course. And 73 years old, and as we are speaking, he's on tour in Europe. Later this year, he will be on tour in the United States or in North America and so on. So big world tour, huge tour. We also love his musicians, Manu Katché on drums, Tony Levin on bass and the Chapman stick and so on. So great musicians. We love them all, I think, and we love the jazzy side of it and so on. And I saw this video where he says, okay, like with his other studio album, Up, he tried to get an artist to do an artwork to each and every song of his. And one of the artists that Peter Gabriel loves a lot is Ai Weiwei, the Chinese artist, who is, you have not heard of him, okay? So one of his songs, the one with there's a pink cover or pink illustration to it, an animated illustration by
Ai Weiwei. That's the new one.
It's the new album. Not the last, but the previous or the newest single. Yeah, look it up. It's a great song. And Peter Gabriel says, I'm a big fan of Ai Weiwei because of his like design capacity, his work as an artist, his incessant work striving for democracy and against Chinese tyranny and authoritarianism. And Peter Gabriel said in autumn last year, they tried to contact him at Ai Weiwei, one of the greatest artists of today, of course. He had no idea who Peter Gabriel was. So Peter Gabriel puts it like this, it was a little bit of uphill conversation. Which is so great. One of the greatest musicians that we have. Everybody knows him. Ai Weiwei, of course, one of the greatest artists, doesn't know him, gives a shit. Dude. So he had Peter, and of course, why does Peter Gabriel do this? Why does he try to suck in Ai Weiwei into his sphere of work, into his album and his thing? Because this is not about profits. I think they probably paid Ai Weiwei a fair amount of money, maybe for a good cause, even because Ai Weiwei earns money with other stuff. So why connect? Why doesn't Peter Gabriel just go on tour and make him tons of money? There's more to it. There's the art factor. There's this, you want to show the world. You want to work with great colleagues. You want to position pop. Peter Gabriel always wanted to prove that pop can be art and combine the political with art and so on. So there's much more to it. And this stands to combine the superfluous, like art, with your business and making it a part and being fanatic even about it. That is, how do we call it? Comprehensive fitness. That's all around success. And that's why Peter Gabriel has all around success. Everybody loves him. Everybody admires him for good reason, because he has been doing this so consistently for 5 decades.
In 1986, when So came out and Sledgehammer was big, he was at the top of the game. And then he just kind of he totally went into a different phase of his career. And that next 7 years before the next album, I think he did The Elders. I think he did so many other socially conscious projects. Now, again, ideologically, maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But Biko for sure. Back in 1980, the best year in music of all time, I would have to say 1980. But yeah. Great example, great example. And there's a documentary that kind of shows this process and his thought process of how, remember the Security album, 1982 with Shock the Monkey and all that stuff, is very interesting to show his approach to the band, to the people, and just in the creation of music, how you can kind of get a sense of this guy, and it's very interesting. So
I saw a documentary about the making of Soul, which was very interesting. Highly recommended. But I'm not sure about the name. We have to look it up.
so we'll do that on YouTube. That
Good.
maybe it'll be next time.
Yeah, I
So
think
this,
even beyond business, we see that mono-maximization is shit and will not achieve anything. And that if you want to truly be successful, not just in the short term, but in the long term, you have to go for more.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a good time for us to transition to the live call. For those of you who are out there and still watching, I see there are two of you who I don't know who you are, but we hope that you come to betacodex.org/live and talk with Niels and I about whatever you want to talk about at this point. And this week is also the BetaCodex Network Global Community Gathering, Wednesday at noon Eastern Time, noon to 1:30 our time, 6 to 7:30 in CET, and various and sundry times across the world. But that's where we will be going. There will be a session for newbies, for newcomers to the BetaCodex to discuss and ask questions about what is the BetaCodex. And then there will also be a session hosted by possibly Niels, possibly by someone else who's out there, of what projects do we have going? I'm getting a phone call. I think it's urgent. Someone calling me twice. The current projects in the network. Maybe there'll be an update on the open space beta commentary. Who knows? Maybe you can talk with someone who has some thoughts about that, or new projects, or whatever else you may have as a knowledgeable BetaCodex network consultant who is seeking to help organizations be more beta. So, Niels, any parting words you would like to share with our viewers?
No, just that next week we'll be back with a topic that is. You want to give it away already? What we're thinking?
Yeah. The topic is, you can't predict the future. Why try?
That would be a nice topic.
All right, everybody. Be well, do well. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention, and we'll see you on betacodex.org/live.